Oh, hey, all right, all right, all right. Here we are. Good morning. What do you think of my new background? I'm trying out some new things. Kind of goes good with my shirt. So here I am. I think this is a second or third 9 a.m. Central Time LinkedIn Live. I'm still adjusting to the time and but getting better every week and hoping to arrive at 9 going forward. But thank you if you have remained here patiently waiting for me to go live. I'm sure you've got plenty to do while you're waiting. Or if you're watching the recording of this broadcast, I really appreciate you. I really appreciate you um, taking the time to join me here, and I truly hope that you find just like some little nugget that you can take with you that helps you shift how you approach, how you feel about, how you view your career and your life, and it helps you to feel lighter and bring back more fun into your career, and also maybe expand your. And we could all use this right now. I think expand your belief in uh, the great amounts of goodness that are out there to be had. And this particular thing I'm going to talk about today, I think, really does help to bring more fun back into our career and create more ease in general. And so it was what I call what feels like lack of motivation might actually be something else. And so, of course, this came from a conversation with a client, one of my private coaching clients. And in the session, she was talking about one of her team members that she was just having trouble getting motivated, right? And I think we all know that at some point, even when I was a kid or with my own kids, giving like I'd be like, okay, we're going to create this star chart, and you're going to get stars for doing your chores, and then you're going to get this toy you want. And, one of my kids was really motivated by that, and the other one not so much, right? And why was that? Why was it that one person would look at the suggested tasks and be all over doing them, and the other person wouldn't? And that was really what the conversation was that we were having with regards to my clients' employees. So they had done a performance review, and in the process, one of the bigger goals was around improving their visibility and communication, not only across the team, but with leadership. And so there were some things, some required actions that the person was going to be working on. And there was also some suggestions that my boss had made, right? And it wasn't, performance wasn't, this was more about development than it was like this person's, uh, you know, you know, was highly successful in doing their job and was very well liked across the team. There was just some communication snafus, some improvements that could be made there, and as well as had a tendency to kind of stay in their um, less visible. So stay more quiet and more uh, focused on their work, which gave good outcomes, but also there, it can put a barrier up, a little bit sometimes when you do that. So my boss was really encouraging this person to come out a little bit, and it would really help advance their career. So the next performance review runs comes around, and she's confused because the things that the requirements, that they had discussed were all done well, but the suggestions were still sitting there with no attention was given to them, and she couldn't understand why this person wasn't responding, because she knew that and had evidence of, if her boss had, put together these things that were required that they were going to work on, and then these optional ideas, she would have done both. She would have been right after both of those. And so it just didn't make sense to her, why, even though they were optional, the person had paid zero attention to them. And I said, look, I said, she was like, I want to get them motivated, and I want this for them. This is good for them. And I said, uh, you know, motivation is really not external. Um, I don't think, I think this is an internal thing that happens. And I believed, and what I shared with her is that she had, or her team member had fallen into what I call the borrowed purpose trap. So, what do I mean by the borrowed purpose trap? Um, so the we had both agreed that, people are different, right? And they get motivated by different things. And some, like herself, would look at the optional suggestions and be all over it, while others would focus very strongly on what was required of them, but delay on any suggested goals, either delay starting or start and stop or do nothing at all, right? But it's not because that person wasn't natural, that one person was naturally more motivated than the other person. But it's more likely, I think, that one person had aligned purpose behind the suggestions, and the other person, there wasn't buy-in, right? They weren't fully aligned, and if they were going to do it, they were going to have to borrow someone else's purpose, reason. Even if it was for them, it just felt like not theirs, right? It felt like someone else's. And so when you borrow someone else's purpose, often what happens is, because you're not fully bought in of what you're being asked to do, you might start working on it and then stop. Like I said, you might not work on it at all, or, you start to lose steam as you're going through, and it becomes a little bit exhausting, right? Um, Even when you're knowing that it's not a bad suggestion, right? But that's just not a good enough why. So how do you move from someone's, from feeling like you're borrowing someone else's purpose to getting it aligned for yourself, as a bigger why for why you were doing it? So I explored this with my client, um, who would have immediately, of course, acted on the suggestions. And, she said, well, I'm like, well, why did you do the suggested ones? And she knew right away. She's like, oh, because I was very committed to getting this promotion. So these were suggestions, but they totally aligned with where she wanted to, with this promotion that she wanted. And so she had found this aligned purpose. And so it became hers, it became connected to something that she desired. And so doing both the required and the suggested in her performance review was a no-brainer. She was going to figure out how to get all of it done before the next review. And not because her boss said so, but because she believed the suggestion was, you know, connected to her bigger career goals and of advancement. And so that got me thinking, just in general, about all the things we tell ourselves to do in a job search, or as we're, um, building our careers. We should go out and work on our resume or update our LinkedIn profile. We should network more. We should speak up in meetings. We should uh, get that certification or go for our MBA, or we should want to become a leader. We should build our personal brand. All of and you can see when we use that word should, that's a signal that you might be borrowing a purpose instead of finding something aligned with your own motivations and desires. So we can hear these suggestions from our bosses, from our parents, from colleagues, from career coaches, perhaps from, parents, even through social. You know how that whole fear of missing out, maybe, or something like that, where you'll see something, you're like, oh, look at that person. That person's killing it. I need to do what they're doing. I should be doing this and I should be doing that. And then you just feel like, oh, yeah, drained. And I do think it will start to even impact those things that you used to be fully aligned. When you the more you borrow some other purpose, that energy impacts the energy you would have had, like this really high, engaged energy that you would have had before for the things, for your day-to-day work that you're really excited about, and even goals that you were excited about, because there's something going on in your brain where you're like, oh, I should be doing more. I should be doing different. I should be doing what they're doing, right? Or what they tell me I should be doing. And so all of that starts to be like a leak, an energy leak. And so we never ask ourselves, is what's being suggested something that I really want for myself and my career? Because if you're like, okay, setting aside who suggested or why it might have been suggested or where the suggestion came from, but just tuning in and just saying, what do I really want for myself and my career? That can help to create alignment. So I came up with 4 questions that you can ask yourself to help you move from what, that feeling of should, right? That feeling of I've borrowed this purpose to I am fully aligned. I have fully aligned my purpose behind this suggestion. So before you say a quick no, like, oh, that, don't tell me what to do. Um, or before you and miss a good opportunity, right? Or before you say that quick yes, and then again start and then lose the steam, feel the energy drain happening, or constantly this guilt of why haven't I started this yet? I need to start this yet. That sort of weight that builds up. Before you do the quick no or do the quick yes, ask yourself, why do I think I should or would want to do this? First question. Why should I do this? What am I hoping it will give me? What if nobody expected me to do this? Would I still want the outcome that doing this would bring me? And I think the big one, a really big one, is what would make it worth doing for me? How can I get their purpose aligned with my purpose? So now we have dual purposes working together, right? Their suggestions, their desires for you, their sort of, sometimes people can see you in a place that you aren't fully, you're in. I talked about this a long time ago about being in a smaller pot. Like my stepdad and I had each bought these begonias, and I put mine in one pot, and he put them in his same size plant in this much bigger pot, right? And I don't know, a few weeks later, I go to their house and I'm like, is that the same begonia that I bought? Because at the same time, like, is those 2 begonias we bought at the same time? Because his was this huge thing, and he could see, it's like this begonia belonged in this bigger pot. Like he could see that. And I was looking at the begonia and saying, oh, this is the perfect size pot for you right now, or maybe, a week from now. Like this, and that's all I could see. And that's why it's worth spending time on avoiding the quick no or the quick yes and getting yourself aligned, because sometimes other people can really see where what's possible for you before you can see it for yourself, right? And so their suggestions are, might sometimes feel, again, if you haven't fully aligned with them, they can feel more like shoulds. But just imagine that they're seeing you bigger, and you're seeing you, um, uh, you know, different, and, doing, you know, more amazing things. They see this amazing self that's just wanting to break out, and sometimes we hold ourselves back from that growth, right? Where someone else is kind of holding this vision for us, which is wonderful. And I feel like that as a coach, that is one of my jobs, is that because I'm, have a different perspective. I'm seeing my clients kind of outside of themselves. I feel like my role is often to hold that vision. They may have voiced it, but I'm holding it and I'm seeing them achieving that, right? Or even what they might not see for themselves. So, all to say, it makes a lot of sense to spend some time, um, you know, uh, before the quick no or the quick yes, asking yourself, especially that question number four of, well, let me run through them again. Why they think I should be doing this? Why do I think I should be doing this? What am I hoping this will give me? If nobody expected me to do this, would I still want the outcome these actions would bring? And then finally, what would make this worth doing for me? Like, how do I get myself from, I don't know, to, what, this would be worth it. I want to spend my time and energy here. So, all of these questions help you locate your own why, your own, aligned purpose, helps you locate the alignment. And then we all have, I would say we all have things that we have to do in our jobs. We just, like, again, and a longtime entrepreneur, right? And, I already am thinking, oh my gosh, pretty soon accounting is going to be asking my accountant, right? It's going to be asking me for these numbers and things. Not my favorite thing, okay, I've got to put together this and I got to get this over to them and I got to download that, save it and send it through a shared, some sort of safe, secure way to send some things over to them. And it takes time, not my favorite thing to do. And sometimes we just do those. We don't have to go, well, how can I align my purpose around this? You don't have to do that, but you can. But for these things that there's a little voice in your head or inside your inner voice saying this could be good for you, Lori, this might be worth doing. um, Ask yourself those questions. See what you can do to move away from borrowing someone else's purpose and get yourself fully aligned for yourself behind your actions and your why, the purpose for doing them. Um, because this is going to, especially if it's going to require, like, in order to say yes to something, it's going to require your energy, your attention, your sustained effort, perhaps putting something else on the back burner. You realize that might be happening. So you want to move from the borrowed purpose to the aligned purpose. And to connect it to what really matters to you and your career. And that makes everything more fun and easier. When we move from borrowed purpose, if you're not having quite enough fun in your career, I would suggest looking at where you may be borrowing purpose, instead of being fully aligned behind what you're doing in your career, getting an aligned purpose for why you're doing something. Um, and that's, I mean, there's real magic in that. So I encourage everyone, um, watch this recording, read the blog out on my website, become an alchemist. I'm always like, this is what we do, right? We're aligning our actions with our what I call your small p purpose, and even the big P purpose, which I talked about, I think, last week. And it's a blog out there of, I think it was called something like, I know your purpose, or I think I found your purpose or something like that. But the bigger P purpose of just having an opportunity to ripple out higher forms of love into the world, to ripple out patience, to ripple out connection, to ripple out generosity, to ripple out kindness, to ripple out creativity, to ripple out uh, support, all of these forms of really beautiful forms of love that you can ripple out, and it comes from being fully aligned. So that's what I have for you today. Again, hope you found a nugget for yourself as a leader, for yourself in your career, um, as a parent, you know, as a team member, you are you it created a bit of a more awareness around where can I more fully align my career and my life, so that I can create more ease. I suggest more prosperity and more fun. So that's it. I am out, but this has, as usual, been lots of fun, and I'll see you right around 9 a.m. next Wednesday. Thanks so much.